Hello and welcome to Candid Conversation. Our guest this week is one among Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. She is an authoritative voice on environmental issues. She has been associated with the Delhi-based Center for Science and Environment since 1982. Currently, she heads that organization. And she is also the editor of Down to Earth, a magazine on environment issues. Our guest this week is environmental activist Sunita Narain. Welcome, Ms. Narain, to Candid Conversation. And many congratulations for featuring in the Time magazine's list.
Thank you. It is a great honor, and it feels good that our work has been recognized because it's difficult work, it's often inconvenient messages, and it is good to know that it is being heard somewhat. So yes,
will that distinction further egg you on?
Of course it does. I mean, the fact is the crisis is in front of us. There's no doubt that, I mean, today environment is not an issue in dispute. Nobody will argue that environment is not important. I mean, we are seeing our rivers get more and more polluted. Our air is today so toxic that we are now getting diseased because of breathing, just breathing. And our rivers, and we have got garbage on our streets. The challenge of pollution, the challenge of environment is so clear. And today with climate change affecting weather across the world, farmers being affected in our country, the poor, the most vulnerable, I think it's very clear today. The issue of environment is not in dispute. The question for us and for people like me who've been fighting this for so long is, we still don't seem to be on the right path. And that clearly is what is the challenge of the future.
Absolutely. We'll ask you what needs to be done. But while we are recording this interview, we are in the midst of the second phase of the odd-even experiment in Delhi. But as far as the first phase is concerned, there are conflicting studies on the impact of the first phase on air pollution and congestion in the NCR region. While the IIT Delhi study says that the first phase was of little use, there is another study that has been done by the CRRI which says that there has been a significant dip in traffic volume in the national capital. What do you conclude on the basis of the evidence that you have?
The first phase happened when you really needed odd and even. Okay, it was a time when Delhi was really choking to death. You had pollution levels which were going up and up because there was no wind this winter at all. As you will recall, we've had no rain, so the dust levels are very high, and you have inversion. So the combination of all three, where you have cold, inversion, no wind to disperse the pollutants, and no rain to be able to settle the pollutants, was making for a deadly winter. And I think we need to recognize the fact that odd and even in those first 15 days of winter of January made a difference. CSE's own study shows you, and what we did was to take the data from the Central Pollution Control Board and the Delhi Pollution Control Committee, which is DPCC. They have, as you know, 5 to 7 monitoring sites across Delhi. So we took that data and we looked at it to find, is there a possible impact of odd and even? What comes out very clearly is that you do not see a reduction in pollution in the first 2 weeks of January, but what you see is a reduction in the peak. So what could have happened did not happen. Because soon after odd and even, with the weather being as adverse, you saw the peak being very high, which means that the emergency-like situation that you would have had in Delhi, you did not have because of odd and even. Now, that is critical to understand because that is what odd and even is meant for. Odd and even is not supposed to be a regular measure. It is not supposed to be something that you keep using in cities.
But do you suspect that this is becoming a proxy in Delhi for long-term infrastructure development as far as public transport is concerned?
I am definitely concerned by it. Now, the government says it is not, and I'm willing to give them, some time to correct it. But yes, you're absolutely right. It should not become a proxy for long-term action. Because odd and even is an emergency action, it must only be used as an emergency measure. The minute you use it for long-term, you will also find that people will buy 2 cars. There will be other ways that people will fight the congestion. And unless you augment public transport, unless you bring in buses, unless you make parking more expensive, you will not be able to effectively deal with pollution.
Why are these studies at variance with each other?
You know, it's a very good question, and I think it's a lot to do with the lack of data and methodology. Let's take congestion. How do you actually estimate congestion? To estimate congestion, you basically put up a whole lot of cameras at different junction points to look at what is the number of vehicles over there. Now, for that, you need a time series data. You need it before, you need it between, you need it after, you need a day-long data because congestion was also very time dependent. You need it widespread enough because if you look at only Luton's Delhi, you will miss congestion, which really happens in East Delhi or in West Delhi. So you need to design a study which is comprehensive enough, which has enough cameras across the city, which is able to capture the level of congestion. We don't have it. So what you have is extremely poor studies, and they're largely driven by the biases of the people who are doing it. The advantage with pollution studies is that you have only one data source, the Pollution Control Board data and the DPCC data. The issue there is the interpretation. Our interpretation is that the peak was lower. Your interpretation could be, I'm sorry, pollution went up. Now, it's a question of interpretation, but pollution data is more robust. Congestion data is extremely weak. And therefore, I think what is needed in the country today is actually to improve our database and our methodologies because we will want to use these measures more and more. Okay. We will need that data.
During this second phase, you have data from the Ministry of Earth Sciences, SAFAR, that the ozone levels have spiked on 17th, 18th, 19th April, on 24th and 25th April. And the DPCC says that as far as border areas are concerned, there has been a spike in PM 2.5 and PM 10 levels on the 23rd of April. So what do you make of this data, and is the second round working?
You know, again, too quick, too early to call. I think we need to analyze the 2-week data, but the point you're making on ozone definitely should worry us because please understand, in winter we worry about PM 2.5. In summer, we worry about ozone. So the pollutants also change, but the source of pollutant remains the same because ozone comes from diesel vehicles which emit NOx, which in turn leads to ozone formation. So what we will need to do is to understand what indeed has been the pattern, and I hope that we'll be able to also compare it with the weeks before and the weeks after. Because to be able to draw a judgment call on the 2 weeks of odd and even, we will need to look at both the pollution data and not just PM 2.5, but ozone, as you're saying. We'll have to compare it for before and after and look at weather data. Because the big issue here is really the unknown is the weather. Because the day you have wind, you have more dispersion of pollutants. The day you don't have wind, you have less dispersion. The day your pollutions in Beijing, for instance, they use it as an emergency measure. So when they know that pollution is going to be high, very high, and they have a cutoff for 3 days consecutively, so they know the weather, you can forecast this, then they kick in odd and even. But they do one additional thing. One, it is 24 hours, so it is not limited to 8 hours in a day. It's comprehensive, which means two-wheelers, cars, everyone. There are not so many exemptions there. And they do one additional thing. They also say 30% government cars must be off the road. So they use it as a serious pollution control measure. Here, by not including two-wheelers, it can never be a pollution control measure.
But can two-wheelers be included in odd even in a country like India where so many poor resort to two-wheelers as the only means of commuting?
Again, very good question again, but you know, to my mind, you can include two-wheelers if you augment public transport. Because the alternative for people in cars, the alternative is carpooling. For people in two-wheelers, the real changeover is public transport. Which is why I keep emphasizing odd and even will not work unless you increase public transport at a scale that has never been seen before.
You've called it mobility transformation in the past.
Absolutely. You cannot talk about this, कि एक बस ले आऊंगी, 2 बस ले आऊंगी, 10 buses, not good enough. It's a transformation. We need that.
Since you're referring to the number of buses, the Delhi budget says that 3,000 new buses will be brought in, but we haven't seen any visible improvement as far as public transport is concerned. Can we really wait it out for 1.5 years? The Delhi government says wait for this amount of time, wait for 1.5, 2 years for augmentation of public transport.
See, I'm always worried about this because everybody seems to believe that public transport agenda is for tomorrow and not for today. Okay? If you want to bring in 1,500 or 3,000 buses, you need a rollout plan so that every month you are adding some buses. But what we constantly seem to do is to put it away thinking that magically 1.5 years later, it will be done. But you have to start someday. And we're not starting. I mean, it is a point, and I have made this publicly, and I will repeat it. It's now been over a year of the new government in Delhi. We have not seen a single addition of bus. We know that they are full of intentions to increase the bus fleet, but we are still not seeing any action on the ground. And I do not believe that you can bring in 3,500 buses a year and a half later when the bus companies itself capacity is not there to manufacture so many. So you need to start ordering, bringing in, ordering, bringing in. Because remember another thing, the more we are delaying it, there's also old buses on the road which will go off the road. So every time, by the time you add another 1,000 have gone off the road. So you are not augmenting. So we need this to be done at a real, you call a war-like situation. You need a war-like effort right now. It's not a simple thing. And that's, I think, where we need this mentality change, that this is war. We need a war on pollution because otherwise it will take us all down.
Absolutely. So that is Sunita Narain saying that as far as air pollution and congestion problem in the NCR region is concerned, that needs to be tackled on a war footing. We are today in conversation with environmental activist and one among 100 most influential people in the world, according to the Time magazine, Sunita Narain. Stay tuned.
छलका था अमृत का घट जहाँ मोक्षदायिनी क्षिप्रा तट जहाँ साधु मिले दूभर दुर्लभ जहाँ पूज्य संत करते हैं तप।
Welcome back. You're watching Candid Conversation. Our guest this week is environmental activist Sunita Narain. Ms. Narain, the Delhi government has said that it is considering making odd even permanent. Could that be counterproductive instead of being productive in curbing pollution?
We have made it clear we are not in favor of it. We had suggested odd and even to the Delhi government as an emergency measure, and we stick to it because we certainly believe that odd and even, if it is made permanent, will not have the kind of impact that we want. You're already seeing on the road that people are buying second-hand cars. You're already seeing people are basically resorting to other measures to defeat this. So I think we need to be very clear. We will need to do a lot more, and we need to do it fast, but odd and even cannot be a proxy to all that action.
The Delhi government has reduced VAT on diesel, and there are also heaps of fly ash in Badarpur. How does all this augur for air pollution in Delhi?
See, this is the point. We need an action plan, and on every front we need to be effective. The VAT on reducing the VAT on diesel will be counterproductive because the Delhi government itself has a cess on diesel. Now, to reduce the VAT and then have a cess makes no sense. And we cannot argue that Haryana's VAT is lower, so we need to equalize it. In fact, we need to argue that Haryana needs to increase the VAT because we want to disincentivize diesel, not incentivize diesel. The Delhi government and the Supreme Court, particularly the Supreme Court, has given very clear orders that only CNG taxis will ply in NCR. Then why are we promoting the use of cheaper diesel? So very clearly, the second issue on fly ash is equally important. The fact is that if you look at all studies, they are suggesting dust is a problem but when you analyze the dust, the big problem is both garbage burning as well as fly ash in the dust. And it is very clear that Badarpur Power Station is today an old power station, an extremely polluting power station. But more than that, it has a massive piece of land, massive. And you know, when you look at the piece of land, which
400
is under,
hectares.
exactly, it's under just fly ash. Just think of a waste of land in a poor country like India. 400 hectares of land are today lying as a waste dump for fly ash. And that fly ash, every time there is wind, it blows in the air. And that is adding to the crisis of air pollution. And fly ash, obviously, you don't want to be breathing in directly. So it's clear we need effort to control it. The Delhi government had said they will shut down Badarpur. But then they said that the Delhi Pollution Control Committee has actually said they meet the norms. But how do they meet the norms with a fly ash disposal? And so obviously we need stricter action. But then you've also seen now that another problem is emerging, that you have garbage burning, which is happening in Delhi's garbage dumps.
It happened a couple of days earlier as well in the heart of Delhi.
It's happening in Delhi. And please understand, you know, it happened in Mumbai and we all looked at it and said, oh, it happened in Mumbai. It's happening under our noses in Delhi. The fact is, for so long, we have been dumping all our household garbage in Balswa, in Ghazipur. Today, those dumps are mountains. And there is, as you have read, the Jharia coal fire. There is a Jharia coal fire happening under our noses because that waste dump is today caught fire underneath. And there is no way that you can douse it till you can actually have serious remedial action. And that is critical for a city like Delhi, that we cannot be slow in acting, because the minute you are slow in one action, another action blows up, which means that you need to be both effective in all fronts, but you need to take hard action and take it quickly.
You've moved court against the big manufacturers for cars that run on diesel, and you have sought a 30% environment compensation charge on vehicles. Currently, there is a ban on new registration of these vehicles in Delhi. But they say that more polluting vehicles are being allowed to ply on the roads. They don't even comply with Euro 1, Euro 2, Euro 3, forget about Euro 4. So why ban us?
You know, it's a lot of disinformation that is being spread. Firstly, what have we asked the court? We have for the last 15 years, and please understand this is not new, which is what appalls me when the diesel manufacturers are pretending as if they're the victims in this case, okay? For 15 years, we have gone to court saying that all over the world there is great concern about the toxic emissions, the carcinogenic emissions that come out of diesel cars. That even in Europe today, with Euro 6, which is much cleaner fuel, down to almost zero sulfur in the fuel, extremely clean, even then they are saying that the diesel cars on the road emit far greater than what was there in the factory. So it is very clear that diesel emissions are today indicted all over the world as being a particularly dangerous pollutant.
And the Volkswagen scam has exposed quite a few.
Exactly. People. And today in Europe, yes, you know, just this week, they have come up with a massive campaign where mayors across Europe are now saying we will not allow diesel across. Okay, so there is clear concern. Now, what have we asked the court? We have simply said to the court, we do not want a ban on diesel cars. We want a price equalization so that there is no difference in the price of petrol and diesel. Then you as a consumer take a decision saying, I am still buying a diesel car, even though I know it is more polluting, I will continue to buy it, even though it is the same price as petrol. And I know you will not do it. Today you do it, you buy a Mercedes-Benz, which will cost you 1 crore of rupees, but you will buy it knowing that it is cheaper because the tax on diesel remains lower than petrol. So running costs of diesel are much lower. So all we have gone to court saying is that put an environment compensation charge on the diesel cars to equalize the price between petrol and diesel. Now, as the car companies opposed this in the Supreme Court took a temporary measure to say, okay, let us ban 2000 cc and above registration, new cars. But they said that this is temporary till we decide on the quantum of environment compensation charge. Now, the reason the diesel manufacturers would like to spread disinformation is they want their polluting business to continue. For so long they fought us saying they will not bring Euro 6, they will not bring Euro 6, BS6 emissions. The government of India stepped in, and I'm very glad to say that the government of India understood this was a game changer. They stepped in, they advanced the Euro 6, BS6 emission norms. Now what does that do? Brings in cleaner fuel, cleaner technology. But manufacturers have opposed every effort to curtail their business, even if it is the business of pollution.
You pointed out that the centre has advanced BS6 emission norms to 2020. How much of a difference will it make across the country, not just in Delhi?
Oh, I think it's a big game changer. The fact is that BS emission norms are the cleanest that you can get. Okay. Now it's another matter that in Europe they're finding that diesel vehicles still on the road do not comply with those norms. We will have to tighten up our regulation. But nevertheless, in terms of technology, in terms of fuel, this is the best you can get. And the best thing this time is the centre has also agreed that they will do BS6 across India. Because please remember, Delhi gets a lot of attention, and it should because it is the capital of India. It also should because it is highly polluted. But it isn't as if the rest of India is not polluted. And all small cities of India are equally getting polluted because we don't have any clean fuel, clean technology. So I think what will be a game changer is to bring it across India so that everybody gets clean fuel, everybody gets clean technology. And I know it's still 4 years away. To me, it seems very long a time because we're all gasping for breath, but still, I think it's a very big move, and I'm really seeing this as something that will bring us some changes at least 4 years later.
That was about air pollution. Let's focus a little about water pollution. And the Yamuna flows here, and we've been passing through the stink of the Yamuna. Is poor sewage management really contaminating our water bodies and groundwater sources?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, today you do not have a river in Delhi. It is a sewage canal. We have killed the river. The only thing is we have not cremated it. Okay? And be also very clear, it isn't as if governments in India have not tried to clean rivers. I mean, you have a Ganga action plan, you have a Yamuna action plan, you have a Kaveri action plan, you have a Krishna action plan. Yet all our rivers are dying today. And the reason they're dying is because we haven't understood how should we do pollution control. We are trying to do pollution control in the way the rest of the world has done, which is you grow. As you grow, you build your underground sewerage network. You connect your flush toilet to your sewerage network to a sewage treatment plant. But the fact is, India is both rich and poor, and it is growing so fast. So even as you build one pipeline, another area requires another pipeline, or another pipeline gets damaged. And you have almost 70% of this country which is not connected to a sewerage network. Now with that kind of a backlog, can you really think that you will catch up?
Another major crisis that is facing the country is of drought. 250 odd districts are afflicted with drought, and the central and the state governments are now putting in resources together to tackle the issue. But why are these droughts and floods recurrent? Every year there is a vicious cycle nearly of these droughts and floods, and are they man-made disasters?
They're absolutely man-made disasters, and please understand, and this really worries me. I mean, I think it almost makes my heart like stop at times when I think about what are the possibilities for the future. We need to reverse this. Now, there are 3 key reasons what we are seeing. One, you are seeing climate change kick in. The fact is, climate change is going to make weather more and more variable, more and more extreme.
And it has already, hottest March in over a century.
Yet, Assam is in flood, okay? Assam has had the most crippling drought. And today it's had such a bad flood because it had a cloudburst. This is what climate change will do. You will have uncertain rain, you will have extreme rain, you will have extreme heat, you will have extreme cold. This is effect of climate change. Now this is combined with the fact that we have man-made disaster where instead of harvesting every drop of water, instead of conserving water, we wasted 10 years, 10 good monsoon years. Just think about it. You've had the world's largest employment generation program to build water bodies in the world. Instead of using Manrega to build the water body, we only focused on Manrega for employment. And as a result of it, we have no idea of the quality of the asset that we should have created. We have done wrong siting of the water bodies. Okay? We could have used Manrega for a water conservation program so that every drop of rainwater was harvested, was stored underground for the times of drought. Secondly, we need massive water conservation efforts. We'll need to make sure that all the city water is reused and recycled. We have to make sure that we become obsessive about the way we use our water. Anybody in India who wastes water must be treated as a criminal number one. And it is possible. We are a water prudent society. We used to eat crops, just think about it. We used to eat crops which were water frugal. We ate barley, we ate jowar, we ate ragi because they grew in a way that they used less water. Then we became a water flatulent society. Today you and I only eat rice and wheat. All that requires water. So, India is an extremely conscious, rational society when it comes to water. We had cities of Jaisalmer which grew up without rain. And yet today, even in the wettest part of India, which is Meghalaya, you have a drought in Cherrapunji. So drought is man-made, drought is reversible, but it requires us to be obsessive about water conservation.
We've also been talking about the impacts of climate change. Very recently in Paris, several countries have signed the Paris deal. What were the achievements for developing countries like India? And isn't there a lot of unfinished business as well?
Lot of unfinished business. I think countries like India must assert their voice, continue to assert their voice, fight for both an effective climate deal but also an equitable climate deal. There cannot be any way out of this.
Thank you so much, Sunita Narain, for having joined us on Candid Conversation. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much.